Is Quaffle suffering from self-esteem issues because of her massive salmon-coloured nose? What? Hello guys, welcome back to the channel. If you haven't guessed, today we are doing a Q&A video and a bit of a life update video because a lot has been going on these last few months. It has been hectic beyond belief. Absolutely beyond belief. Between traveling down to Think Parrots, me and Jason went on a little anniversary holiday for the first time in 10 years. Then on top of that, these girls have been horny little rascals. We have been, as you know, trying to buy a new house and all the rigmarole and legalities and everything that comes along with that. It has been a very, very, very stressful 6 months, to say the least. And so much has happened that I can't even get around to it all. But we thought it'd be good to actually give you guys a little bit of a life update and do a Q&A at the same time. So we asked you guys on both YouTube and Instagram if you have any questions for us to answer in this video. And I'm going to show you guys some of your questions and answer them as best as I can. Or as we can. You can answer them with me? You are? Oh, very good. So the very first question is from Feathers Only, which says, is Quaffle suffering from self-esteem issues because of her massive salmon-coloured nose? No. Quaffle is a very proud girl and has no self-esteem issues whatsoever. She's quite happy and confident in herself and could not give a damn what other birds think of her. Another question also from Feathers Only. If you can't tell, Feathers Only is actually a good friend of mine, so she quite enjoys answering these weird and random comments. Why is Quaffle's nose so prominent? Or her exact thing is, why is Quaffle's noses so prominent? May I have you, darling? Now, believe it or not, Quaffle's nose actually isn't that prominent. It's actually quite flat against her head. The reason it is so obvious is because her skin colour is pink or salmon coloured, isn't it? That's just the natural colour of her skin, which is also a very common colour in white-crowned Pionuses. I always call you capped, and you're not technically capped. You are, but you're not. It's a very complicated subject. You want fusses as well? I can't fuss you when you were down there and I've got two hands on her. But the reason it is so obvious is because the salmon coloration, especially when she's feeling excited or hormonal, does go very, very bright and is very vivid against her feathered colours. Because her feathered colours are very dark and then you've got the contrast of the white, it does make the orange or the pink of her nose stand out quite a lot, doesn't it? Yes. Well, you turn around for the camera. And the same goes for Lyra. Lyra has a slightly different skin tone colour to Quaffle. As you can see, Lyra's skin tone colour is actually more reddish and the nose is more grey in comparison. And again, this is a common trait with Bronze-wings Pionus. Bronze-wings Pionus usually have an orange or red iris when they get excited or flare up. Iris, that's the wrong word, eye-ring. When they get excited or when they flare up. Usually it is similar to Quaffle, it's a pale salmon colour, but then when they get excited it goes very bright red or very bright orange, depending on the species. Because believe it or not, there is actually multiple subspecies of Bronze-wings Pionus, which all have ever so slightly tiny differences. Some will have more red around the eyes, some will have more orange around the eyes. Are you getting jealous because she's getting the spotlight? Jealous because your sister's getting the spotlight? She's getting jealous of you. But the reasons Lyra is less noticeable than Quaffle's is because Lyra has darker skin colours around her nose, which matches the colour of her feathers, whereas Quaffle's is a very, very bright contrast in colour compared to her feather colour. I'm gonna stretch. Woo! Lyra also likes sitting on the phone, so she may see her like this quite a bit. The next question is from Swept Away. Do yours destroy things they're not supposed to, or is it just mine? Let me show you. This has all been ripped until, like, it's not obvious, but she's actually chewed on all this and caused this to rip. You can see down here where we put blue roll down in order to protect the shelf from poos. That has also been ripped and destroyed. That gets destroyed quite a lot. But the most obvious one is right here at the top of the door. Look at this artwork from Lyra. Yeah, you're gonna give an example of how you do it, how you do your artwork. But basically, Lyra quite often sits on the top of this door and chews the top of the door frame. And this is a very common trait for all parrots. All parrots are known to do this. And then you obviously have destruction of toys that gets absolutely everywhere. You can see at the bottom. Start getting angry at you two. Right, listen here. That is enough of this. So you can see all the stuff at the bottom where they've destroyed their toys. Yes, I know. They're both getting very angry. They don't have the camera near their cages. And obviously, any foraging toys like this, they destroy quite badly. Yeah. I would also show you some of my books that Quaffle has nibbled on. However, they are already tracked passed away, which is a bit of other good news I will be sharing in just a moment. Quaffle has also chewed on several of my books and bookmarks and God knows what else, because destruction is a normal, natural part of parrot ownership. They destroy for fun. In the wild, they chew bark, they chew trees, they chew on leaves, and they have fun with gravity. Gravity is the most amazing thing in the world to parrots. And they do this in order to keep their beaks trim, in order to keep their beaks the right length and to keep them short. Because that is a sign of a healthy parrot, is if a parrot destroys things to keep their beak nice and healthy, it is a sign of a healthy parrot. They naturally want to chew on things that are made of wood, made of paper, in Lyra's case made of plastic. And this is normal. This is something a lot of people don't seem to realise when they actually go to buy a parrot, is just how destructive they actually are. This is a completely normal part of their behaviour. Why do we put up with you again? Another question from Step Away is, do you have bad days where you second guess the decision you've made of having a parrot? Yes. And I do feel that every owner, at least once in their parrot owning lifetime, will experience this at least once. And if they don't, they're a very, very, very special person. But yes, there are very, very bad days when I do question whether or not I made the right decision. It might be days where I've got a really bad headache and they won't stop screaming. Or it might be a day where I'm really ill and I'm curled up on the couch and I want nothing more than to spend the entire day curled up in bed. And I can't. I need to get up and look after my parrots. And then there are other days, like just now, when I've got brand new clothes on or clean clothes on and then they poo all over me when I need to be out the door in like 3 minutes and I can't get the poo stain off, and then I need to go upstairs, get changed, and then I'm late for whatever I have to go to. There are also days when they are just being extra screamy or extra destructive, or I'm just having a really, really bad day. And the last thing I want to worry about is having to care for another creature. But you have to. This is what you signed up for. Parrots are no different than children in that respect. They require the same amount of care. They require the same amount of attention. They require the same amount of looking after. They require the same amount of responsibility. Go onto my shoulder, please. They require the same amount of training and teaching and level of obedience. The truth is, owning a parrot is very, 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 very similar to having a toddler 24/7. You have to schedule your life around them. You have to plan things around them. There are days when my friends have invited me around for barbecues and parties, and I've had to leave 3 hours early because I need to get home in time to put these two to bed so that they're not grouchy the next day. When you take a parrot into your life, especially one that has certain demands and needs, like, for example, with these two, where they have a very strict 6 p.m. bedtime routine. Why are you getting horny now? You do have to make sacrifices in your life and in your social life in order to care for them, which is why having fellow parrot friends helps. Why are you getting horny? And then you have the jealousy. They get jealous of each other really easily. But yes, everyone will have at least one day or more where they do question their decision about getting parrots. Because we're not all perfect. We are all human at the end of the day. And there are situations in life and things that happen in life that you can't do when you have parrots that you could do when you didn't. And it does make you question it. But I have to admit, there are a lot more good days than there are bad days. We have a lot more days where I really appreciate these girls being in my life, and I really appreciate the love and affection and care they actually bring to my life. Because there have been some really, really hard days and really difficult days where I've loved nothing more than just being able to sit and relax and chill and fuss these two. Yeah, or watch you play, or chat to you, or sing to you when I feel like no one else is helping. They're special little creatures. Next question is from Caesarined. I'm not too sure how to pronounce your Instagram handle, do apologise. Quaffle, stop with the hornies, you hussy. The question is, how old is she/he? For anyone that is new to my channel and doesn't know the backstory, these are both girls, they're both females. Lyra is just turned 3 years old. She turned 3 years old in June, and Quaffle come here, Baba, is 6 years old. Quaffle turned 6 in May. So that is how old they are. There's 3 years difference between them. We've had Quaffle since she was a year and a half old, approximately. And we've had Lyra since she was 13 weeks old. Right, this next one is actually in a different language. So I'm gonna have to translate it, 1 second. Okay, so I've had to use Google Translate, so it might not be 100% accurate, but the translation, but the question's apparently in Portuguese, or Brazilian Portuguese. I could be wrong on that one. That's what Google Translate's telling me. And the question is, what is Freeflight like with Pionus? I have Pionus maximiliane and it's been difficult to get to Freeflight. So Freeflight with Pionus is very different compared to Freeflight with macaws or conures or other species like that. Whereas macaws or conures do tend to zoom around and you'll do really big, exotic, like amazing flies. These guys, or especially my two, prefer A to B flights, which is not unsurprising. They are known as couch potatoes, they are lazy flyers, and they do prefer A to B, A to B, A to B. At least my girls do. Lyra will sometimes do an exploratory, but it's very, very, very rare. Who done me again? An exploratory is where they do a really big loop-de-loop fly, but again, it is very rare. They prefer to just do A to B, so from a tree to me or from their perch to me, that is their preference. And this is something that a lot of people realize. There's lots of different types of free flying. Some people free fly A to B, like me. A lot of people, like macaw owners and conure owners, actually do exploratory type free flies. Amazons are great 50-50ers. They can usually do big exploratories or do A to Bs in the trees. They are very adaptable. And this is something that a lot of people realize is different species require different free flight requirements. So compared to macaws, Pionus actually prefer woodland. They prefer a canopy above their head because they are a canopy species. So they find it safer and feel more comfortable in a wooded area compared to the open skies. You can train them to fly in open skies, but it is far more difficult compared to a macaw or a conure who just take to it naturally. And even then, some small conures do prefer the woodlands, do prefer the safety of the trees, so it varies. With that being the case, it means that Pionus require very, very different free flight training compared to a macaw or a large conure. Whereas a macaw or a large conure, you'd want to train them in the open skies, in fields where they've got plenty of space to turn and soar. With Pionus or even small conures, you actually want to train them to come down from trees, come up from the ground, to be able to dart and turn and spin very, very sharply as they dodge the trees. They require very, very different type of free flight training compared to a big open sky flyer. And this is why a lot of people in the free flight community do recommend getting an experienced free flyer to teach you free flight or to mentor you through free flight, or even to find a free flight mentor who has experience with that particular species. Because every bird as an individual is different. Some birds make great free flight candidates, some don't. Some require more desensitization training than others. Some require more skill training than others. Some require more actual flight training than others. Some require more ascent and descent training. Some require open sky. Some require closed canopy. Free flight is a very, very, very complicated thing to learn, and you have to learn as much as you can as the owner in order to make free flight more successful for your bird. It's a very complicated subject, and it's why not a lot of people talk about it online, because they don't want to get the blame for your bird going missing if you fail to miss a step during the training. And this is why no one posts about it on YouTube, no one makes videos about it, because it is such a complex topic depending on each individual species of bird and each individual bird. No one wants to be responsible for you following their guidelines and then those guidelines not working for your bird and your bird end up going missing. Do you know what I mean? As a species, Pionus are difficult to train to free fly, especially when they're going through puberty or the hormonal, because they get very, very, very stubborn and they are very lazy flyers. They prefer quick, short A to B flies, and you have to be very careful not to fly them through siesta time. If you fly them through siesta time, they will tree sit for 2 to 3 hours and you is not getting them down. And then similar topic from Free Flighted Feathers, where and how did you learn free flying? I actually learned free flying from multiple of my free flight friends. I have multiple friends up in Scotland who free fly cockatiels, who free fly blue-throated conures, who free fly macaws, who free fly, what else do they free fly? One of them used to have a military macaw that free flown, unfortunately has since passed away. I have friends down south who flies Patagonians. I've got a friend down south who flies an Illigas macaw. I have friends that fly big macaws. I've got friends that fly Amazons. I've got friends over the United States that fly cockatoos. I basically joined a free flight community group for free flight training, and from there I made friends who had similar species or similar experience and had years worth of free flight training under their belt, some with multiple different species, and I got as much knowledge from them as I physically could and adapted it as best as I could to my individual girls. Don't start getting horny again. So like I said, with Pionus, they do require slightly different training to a lot of other species, and I had to learn myself what changes and what adaptations I needed to make, stop getting horny, in order to make sure that they were successful free flyers. And it took a lot of time, it took a lot of patience, it took a lot of research. It took me 1.5 years to get Quaffle free flight trained because I had to learn all these extra steps that didn't come with some other species. So for example, with macaws, there are quite a few mentors that teach you how to free fly macaws. Stop it, getting too horny again. You need to start getting excited when we make a video. Hormones are raging if you can't tell. But there are a lot of free flight mentors that free fly train macaws. I used to have some, I say used to, we're still friends, but they no longer do mentorship. I have friends up in Scotland that used to mentor smaller birds. They were actually some of the biggest help for me when it came to training my girls. They did a lot of research for me that I didn't even think of and I didn't even consider. They taught me about all the different things I needed to learn, such as weather patterns, wind patterns, which birds of prey were safe and not safe, how to teach ascent and descent, why ascent and descent training was necessary, why recall training was necessary, why desensitization was necessary. I had to get so much input from so many different people, from so many different species, and then have to try and adapt it to work for my girls. One of the best people I've actually found is my friend Sophie. She has free flown trained multiple different species, and she specializes unintentionally with Amazons, and Amazons, believe it or not, are extremely similar to Pionus. They have a very similar flight style, they have a very similar way of getting around, they have a very similar body shape and style, and they have a very similar dynamic in the fact that they can fly both in canopy and also out in open sky, just like Pionus can, even though Pionus prefer the canopy. So she was actually able to give me a lot of advice and information that a lot of other people couldn't when it comes to the stockier type species. So if you are actually trying to get into free flight or want to try and learn more about free flight, I highly recommend finding someone who is already a free flyer of a similar species or the same species that you already train, or find a free flight mentor and get as much advice and information off them as physically possible. And remember that free flight training doesn't just involve recall training and flight training, it also involves learning a lot about the environment, where's safe to fly, what weather is safe to fly in, what wind levels are safe to fly in, how to know the level of your bird, what birds of prey are safe, what non-birds of prey are not safe, such as seagulls, magpies, crows. And then you also have to know the animals that are available in your area. If you're planning on flying in this area, are there peregrine falcons around? Are there sparrowhawks around? Or is it just buzzards? There's a lot that goes into it. But I basically learnt by having a lot of friends in the free flight community give me a lot of very good advice. So the next question is from Chris de Bruin 4459 on YouTube. I'm curious, what do you give your birds as treats? That varies. We reserve treats for training only, so they don't get these particular treats in their food or in their diet. We did what's called a treat test, and you can find videos about it on Bird Nerd Sophie's channel, the Parrot Teacher's channel, Bird Trixie's channel, about what the treat test actually is, and it's basically how to find your bird's favorite treats, be them seeds or be them nuts. My girls particularly prefer almonds and pine nuts. They get half an almond anytime we're out free flying and they come down from a tree when asked, or they get pine nuts for general training because those are their two favorite treats, and they will do anything for pine nuts and almonds. And then every now and again, when I'm feeling extra generous or for whatever reason I've not had time to physically train them that day, they will sometimes get a Nutriberry, and I say sometimes. They usually get a Nutriberry when we get them as freebies from Northern Parrots. So as an example, if you order something from Northern Parrots, sometimes you'll get Nutriberries as a freebie, and it's very random. It doesn't always happen, but every now and again they will put a freebie of Nutriberries in your box, even though you didn't order them. And when we went to Think Parrots, we actually got 2 packets of Nutriberries for free. We did! So in the case that I do get Nutriberries and we've had a day where we can't physically train, they do get to have a Nutriberry to chew on. But that's the only scenario really that they ever get Nutriberries, is if we've got them for free from going shopping or something else. Other than that, they mainly stick to almonds and pine nuts. We have tried multiple other nuts. They sometimes like a cashew, they sometimes like a bit of walnut, but it's very, very rare. Almonds and pine nuts are the ultimate favorites. Those are the main ones we use as treats. So the next question is from Steph Giles 23. I love watching your videos. I have only had my Pionus Maxi for 2 weeks and training him already. How long did it take for you to get your birds to fly to you on command? We're still at the small jump stage. That's changed between the two girls. Now Lyra, for example, she was really, really easy to train because when she came to us, she actually regressed. Regressed means that they have been weaned at the breeder and they have been weaned for a minimum of 2 weeks before they come home, or at least that's how my breeder does it, and that's how all breeders should do it. All parrots should be completely weaned before they come to a home. However, Pionus are notorious for regression, which means that they go back to wanting baby formula after a big change, such as moving to a new family. And that's exactly what happened with Lyra. And luckily we had researched and prepared for that. And we had some baby formula ready just in case. We actually used that as her reward. Basically, when it was time to feed and when it was time to have her dinner, in order to encourage her to use her wings and practice her flight skills, we would get her to fly to us in order to get her food. And because she was a baby, she was extremely food motivated. So it only took her maybe a day to learn what we wanted her to do, to learn to fly to our hand for food. It took very, very short amount of time. Very, very short amount of time indeed.
You were such a quick learner. You were such a quick learner. You were such a smart girl. My smart little baby.
Quaffle, on the other hand, was a completely different story. Quaffle came to us from a friend. Quaffle was technically a rehome who was also a rescue. She essentially got rescued by my friend from a hoarder's situation, and then my friend unfortunately couldn't keep her because she wasn't getting on with her Patagonian conure. So because of that, Quaffle was rehomed to us, and I had already done a shed ton of research on Pionus Parrots. I was interested in Freeflight, so it worked out really, really nicely. I'm still friends with Quaffle's previous owner even to this day. Now with Quaffle, because she'd actually come from a hoarder situation and she had been locked in a very small cage for the first 6 to 7 months of her life, if not more, or at least for the first year. I'm not too sure exactly how long she was stuck in the hoarders, but because of that, she suffered muscle atrophy, which means that because of the lack of use, the muscles in her chest had shrank and shrank and shrank to the point where she could no longer fly without some form of pain. It's essentially the same as us. Let's say you were a weightlifter for God knows how many years, and then you stopped lifting weights for 3 years. You then can't go back and lift the exact same weights that you used to be able to lift. You have to start yourself from scratch again. That is exactly what happened with Quaffle. She ended up having muscle atrophy from being locked in a small cage and not being able to use her muscles, which means all her muscles down here on her chest didn't work, essentially. So teaching her to come to our hand took a lot longer. It started with basic step-ups and then trying to get the step-ups away, but we found that once the step-up went too far for her to physically reach and touch us, she refused to go any further. She refused to jump, she refused to leap because she was just too scared. While she was with my friend who rescued her, my friend had tried to do some rehab with her, but every time Quaffle had tried to jump and fly, she'd end up falling to the floor and crashing because of the lack of strength in her chest muscles. So this had actually caused Quaffle to actually develop a lot of confidence issues and a lot of confidence in herself. She now truly believed in her head when she made that jump she was going to be crashing to the floor, and she didn't trust herself to land on my hand. So we had to take it right down to scratch. We started on the very, very bottom step of my stairs and made her jump to my hand from the bottom step, or made her jump off the step to the floor to then come onto my hand in order to get the treat. And then we had to progressively get taller and taller and taller and further away. And it took, I want to say it took about 2 to 3 months for her to get the confidence to actually physically leap from height onto my hand. It took a long time of training because she just did not have the confidence in herself or in her wings. But she did eventually get there, and you've seen several times now what a great flyer she actually is. She is very much an A to B flyer. She doesn't trust herself to do the big loop-de-loops, and she's also a very lazy flyer as well, but that's fine. She's more than happy to do A to B's up and down from trees. I need you off my hand while I need to answer the next question. You're on my hand. Will you go on the phone? Thank you. This one is from Alan Moss. I want to say Moss, but it's M033. Bluehead Pionus or Maxi? I'll be honest, I don't understand the question. Let me explain. With myself, I supposedly have ADHD, and I say supposedly because I'm undiagnosed, but a lot of people have told me I should go get diagnosed because apparently I very clearly have it. And the problem is I need context. I don't know if it's an ADHD thing, but I need context in the question. So just saying blue-headed Pionus or Maxi, there's not enough context in that question. I need to know more information. Are you asking me for a comparison? Are you asking me for a preference? Do I prefer bluehead or Maxi? Are you asking me, is a bluehead better than a Maxi? Are you asking me, is a bluehead noisier than a Maxi? Are you asking me, is a bluehead better to live with than a Maxi? Is a bluehead something else compared to a Maxi? Like, I don't understand that question, I'm afraid. I'm sorry. I do apologize. I don't know how to answer that question because I don't understand the context of the question. Alan, if you're watching this video, please leave a comment below with the exact question. Are you asking me as a comparison, a preference? Please elaborate. please can you elaborate on that question and I will answer it in the comments for you. Anu Knebmijur asks, what is the most important thing to do when you've just got a new Pionus? This again is a very complicated question because it depends on the individual Pionus as an individual. But the very first thing that I would say is the most important thing to do is get to know them. Learn their body language, learn their responses, learn their quirks, learn their sounds, and just get them to understand that you are a safe person. This can literally be like I did with Lyra when she first came home. Let them sit in the cage and just sit in the room with them. Be with them. Watch them from a side glance. Get to know their personality. Get to know their body language. Get to know their personal traits, their likes, their dislikes. Get to know them as an individual bird. That's the most important thing you can do, because as soon as you can read the body language and as soon as you know their likes and dislikes, it makes them a hell of a lot easier to live with. The second most important thing to do as getting a Pionus is learn how to care for them. They do require slightly different care compared to other species. Like, for example, an eclectus needs a fruit-only diet. Pionus don't need a fruit-only diet, but they do need a low-protein diet because a high-protein diet can cause them to get very hormonal. Not a lot of people seem to know that. Again, by learning about their care, learn about where they came from, learn about the type of environment they come from, learn about what you need to feed them, what's best to feed them, and what food is available in your country that is safe for them. The reason I say that is because I got recently contacted by a lovely person over in India who also had a Pionus, and their Pionus had just recently started plucking. And it turns out they were on Supreme pellets, which are really bad for Pionus because they're high in sugar and they're high in protein, which is just a recipe for hormonal disaster. The Pionus especially can cause fatty liver disease, it can cause obesity, there's just a lot of problems. Supreme pellets are not ideal for Pionus as a species. However, in India, there's actually very limited amount of pellets that you can actually get for Pionus as a species, which I found very interesting. I didn't know that. I didn't know that certain pellets were only available in certain countries. For example, we can get tops here in the UK, but it very quickly goes out of stock and it very quickly becomes unavailable. So I had to try and find alternatives that weren't ideal, but they were better than what some of the stuff out there is available to me. But when I found out that, for example, over in India, you can't get tops, you can't get half the pellets that I would usually recommend in that country, it made me a bit stumped as to what to recommend, and I ended up having to do a deep dive on Amazon India in order to try and find what pellets were available in that country to try and help this person, to try and improve this Pionus's quality of lifestyle and try and stop them from plucking. It was a challenge. So that is another thing you need to do, is research what you need to feed them in order to keep them nice and healthy, and what food is available in their area, or in your area, should I say. Because what is available for me might not necessarily be available for you. I could be sat here recommending Tops pellets till I'm blue in the face, but it's no good if Tops pellets isn't available in your country. Now we are down to two of the most asked questions that we got. We got this question a lot. From Feathers Only, when are you getting a third Pionus? From Amber's Flock, do you plan on getting any more birds which aren't Pionus? And we did get another question asking about if we were getting another bird, but I can't find the question, so I do apologise if I've missed your question. Now the thing is, that is a very, very complicated answer. It shouldn't be. It shouldn't be a complicated answer, but it is a very, very complicated answer. Let me explain. If I could afford it, I would happily have one of every species of Pionus. Without even a thought about it, without a heartbeat, I would have one of every species of Pionus. I would learn about the different ones. I would have a huge aviary where they could all play around. But the reality is that'll just never be a thing for me. Unless our channel starts earning a heck of a lot more money, which we will go into later either this month or next month as to how much we actually earn from this channel. So look out for that video. I will not be able to afford an entire flock of Pionus. If memory serves correctly, there are 3 species of Pionus that are not available in captivity. They technically are, but they are restricted to breeders only due to how rare they are in the wild. And then there are 5 species available in the pet trade. These are the dusky, the bluehead, the maxi, the bronzewing, and the white crown. And again, if I could, I would happily get all 5 that are available in the pet trade and then have one of each and have my own little collection, if you will. I think that would be amazing. I genuinely do think that would be amazing. However, again, financially, it's just not physically affordable. It's just not possible, as much as I would love that. Now, me and Jason have toyed with the idea of getting a 3rd bird, but there is a few complicating factors that could affect whether or not we get a 3rd bird or not. One of them being Quaffle. Quaffle is not a fan of other Pionus. We originally considered taking on Bella the bluehead when her owner was asking for help in rehoming for her own personal reasons. She was rehoming for good reasons and good intentions for the better of the bird, and also because of some health conditions that she was having, as well as her already 2 conures not getting on with Bella. There was a lot of complications. She was rehoming for the right reasons, and I will never ever judge someone for rehoming for the benefit of the bird, so long as it is for good reasons, and she was very much rehoming for good reasons. We did consider taking her on, but at the time we just physically, financially couldn't afford it, with us buying a new house and being very up in the air about when we were ever going to move. On top of this, when we did meet Bella last year at my Lee's birthday party, Quaffle did not like Bella at all. She flew at her and tried to attack her several times. Bella did nothing wrong, by the way. Bella was just chill, minding her own business, and Quaffle went into full psycho mode and just dive bombed her every opportunity she could. She hated Bella. And we were willing to try and make it work, we just financially couldn't take her on at the time. And she now lives with our friends down in Avian Retreats, and apparently she is getting on amazingly. She's really bonded to Avian Retreats' his wife. I don't know if he's made his name public on social media, so I'm just going to refer to him as Avian Retreats, who, by the way, great place to send your birds if you ever need to go on holiday. Just keep in mind it's down south in England, so not everyone might be able to get there, but it is a great place to send your bird if you do need to go on holiday. But Bella is now living with our friends in Avian Retreats, and they are having a blast. She's having a great time. She's doing really well. And it did make us question, are we ever going to get a 3rd bird? Because Quaffle could make things a little complicated. The camera's dying. Sorry, I just had to put the camera on charge there. You were dying. But that's not the only thing that made it complicated. If we were going to ever have a 3rd bird, there would always be a backup plan in place, so that should Quaffle and 3rd bird never get on or never be able to tolerate being in the same room, we'd have a backup plan to make sure that they could be out separately, or they could have their own space, their own cages, their own out of cage time. We had plans in place to potentially make it work, but it was going to be very complicated and very difficult. On top of this, it's then a question of which species would we get? Would it be another Pionus? Because, what are you doing up there? Just realised it's on top of the curtain rail. She's never gone up there before. It would then be a case of what species of 3rd bird would we get? Because again, I would love another Pionus, especially with this being a Pionus dedicated channel and me being a specialist. I don't like to use that word, but me knowing as much as I do know about Pionus and knowing very little about other species, it would be best to get a Pionus. However, Quaffle doesn't necessarily get on with Pionus, but she does get on with other species. She's got on fine with the fruity flock, which are all green cheek conures and, what is Ringo? Black cat conures. She gets on fine with my client's budgie, Ringo, who stayed over here not too long ago. She gets on fine with the Amazons. She gets on fine with the sun conures. She does not get on with my friend's blue-throated conure though, but then that blue-throated conure doesn't get on with anyone except a pigeon. And again, she gets on with pigeons, she gets on with other species of birds, so it was a case of, would it be a Pionus? Would it be another bird? We just don't know. It's a very complicated situation, and in all retrospect, I would either want a dusky or a Maximilian. No hate to blueheads. Blueheads are amazing birds, and if one badly needed a home, I would be willing to consider taking one on, but they are very screamy. They are very, very, very screamy, and you're already very screamy. You are. You're very screamy. And I can't even imagine how screamy a bluehead is compared to her, and nearly everyone I know who owns blueheads complains about the level of screaming. They scream a lot. If I was to choose, and it wasn't an emergency situation where a bluehead badly needed a new home, I would prefer a dusky because they are very, very rare in this country, and I would love to be able to own one because not a lot is known about them over here. Or a Maximilian being the bigger species, and again being pretty rare here in the UK. It would be nice just to have that variation or that change or that difference. However, there is a third blocker that debates whether or not we will get a third bird. Me and Jason have always wanted children of our own. We've always wanted our own family. However, we are getting on in age. I am now 36, nearly 37. Jason's 37, nearly 38. As many people know in this day and age, it's very difficult to conceive the older you get. I have a lot of friends who've been trying for over a year to get pregnant and only just succeeded. My little sister has been trying and trying for children, and it took her a long time to conceive, and she's 3 years younger than me. One of my friends is really struggling with infertility at the moment and is going through IVF, which has not been going well, unfortunately. We have family members who have gone through IVF because they waited until around our age to have kids and couldn't get pregnant naturally, and was also struggling with infertility and had to go down that sort of route. So the truth is, we actually don't know if we can have kids. We don't know if kids will ever be a part of our family, even though we do want them and do badly want them in our lives. But the truth is, we would not be able to financially afford a third bird and a child. It would literally be impossible. It would financially be impossible for us because we don't make enough money, and children are very, very expensive. So me and Jason did make an agreement, and that agreement would be that if we had children, we would not get a third bird, and if we couldn't have children for any reason, then we would get a third bird. So the general consensus was, if we reach the age of 40 and still have not had children, then we would look at getting a third bird. So we've got at least 3 years worth of waiting before we actually find out that information. Who knows, in the next 3 years, we might have a third bird or we might not. We just don't know yet. But we have made the final agreement. If we have children, we will not be getting a third bird because it'll just be too much to juggle for us. If we do not have children by the time we're 40, then we would look at getting a third bird. Then we would look at the different species, whether or not we'd stick with Pionus, whether or not we'd look at an extra bird, etc, etc. And the last question, which got a lot of questions. I think there's about 4 or 5 people asking this type of question. You're not going on the camera. From IRMT10. I love your Pionus videos, thank you. How many meals a day do you feed your babies? From Not Just Corvids. Would love to see what a typical What My Pionus eats in a day. Might do a video for you, that one. Yeah, with us. From Bird Life Uncaged. Love your channel. Quick question. I'm adopting a Pionus from a rescue in a few weeks. I was wondering what portion you feed your girls of their fresh chop and their dry food. I have a green cheek, but I suspect that the portioning will be different for a Pionus, and I'd like to be prepared. There has been a lot of questions about food and food things, and I do keep meaning to make a what my girls eat in a day video, but I've just not got round to it. There's been so much going on. But I do actually need to do the girls' breakfast for tomorrow, so I will try and briefly go through with you what my girls do actually eat in a day. So come with me to the kitchen. Ugh. Oh dear, my stomach. So to start off making the girls breakfast chop, we don't technically use chop chop, but we also do use chop chop. We start off by getting the blender, or the food processor, whatever you want to call it. We then add in 1 scoop of oats, approximately. And we then add a good heaping of Mikey and Mia's dry mix. And then we blend that all together to make a very fine powder. Then we usually use a variety of bird-safe vegetables or parrot-safe vegetables. This varies depending on what we've got in at the time. We've not actually done our vegetable shopping recently, so we don't have much in. We've only really got carrots, parsnips, frozen sweet corn, things like that, but they all work perfectly fine. We just add those to the mix. Now the truth is, to leave the chop as it just is too dry. So we also add just a little bit of water just to basically dehydrate some of the dry mix, and also just to make it a bit more palatable for the girls, because even though it has some of their favorite fruits and veggies in it, it does come across very dry, and let's be honest, we don't even like to eat dry food. Neither do the birds. Sorry, I've had to switch to my phone because my camera battery's just died, but we basically put that in a sealed container. The girls get 1 tablespoon each every morning for breakfast, and this will usually last about 4 days in the fridge. Make sure to always smell it to ensure don't kill the foam. Make sure to always smell it to ensure that it hasn't gone off before you feed it to your parrots. Ugh. Huh? Something on the back of my chair. It's just bird poo. So that's what my girls get for breakfast. Then for dinner, they actually get a variety of pellets. Now, like I said, I prefer to feed Tops pellets. That is my pellet of choice. It is the safest and healthiest one for Pionus Parrots as an individual species. However, sometimes Tops pellets isn't available in the UK. Sometimes it sells out. They have difficulty getting it over from America, etc, etc, etc. When Tops pellets isn't available, we do have alternatives that we can use which aren't as ideal, but they are still better than half the ones available on the market. Get off my head. Myra really wants her pellets right now. Pellets, they get, again, a tablespoon each, and they usually get these when we leave for work so that they can forage on them through the day while we're gone. Myra really wants these pellets. You can see them in my hand. We actually feed a mixture of pellets at the moment because of the fact that Tops were not available in the UK for a while. So whatever Tops we had left, we mixed in with the other pellets that we give. We have Tops pellets that we give most regularly. We have the Your Parrot pellets, which are these ones here. And we particularly go for the fruit blend ones. However, the fruit blend ones can be a bit high in sugar. So if you find your birds are being quite hormonal on them, go for the herbal blend instead. And the other pellet that we use, which we don't actually have the packaging for anymore, is these little white ones. And they are actually Left Beater's Tropical Gourmet pellets, I believe, which are Lyra's particular favorite, unfortunately. Again, they're not the healthiest in the world. They do contain, I think it's peanuts and sugar. I'm not too sure if the sugar's natural or if it's refined sugar. I've no idea. But they do contain a couple of ingredients that I don't like. However, they are the lowest in protein available with those type of ingredients, and Lyra goes mad for them. You like those ones, don't you? They're her favorite. They're her favorite pellets of the 3 we get. Quaffle doesn't mind the Tops pellets. Your Parrot are her second favorite, but the Left Beater Tropical are always a win for both girls. They both go mad for them, which is annoying as hell when they're actually the unhealthiest of the 3. I say unhealthiest. They're not technically unhealthy. They're just high in sugar and they do cause hormones to trigger a lot easier. But those are the 3 pellet types that we use. And again, they get a tablespoon of pellets before we leave for work for them to snack on through the day. Sometimes, especially with the Tropical Gourmet pellets that Lyra was just munching on, we do actually hide them in their treats as foraging toys just to make it a little bit harder for them to snack on and also a bit more fun for them to try and find. And then at the end of the day, they get a tablespoon of chopped veg. Again, if we don't have a lot of veg in, this can actually be frozen vegetables, so long as it doesn't contain onions or avocado or any other unsafe parrot elements. It's perfectly fine to actually give your parrot humans grade frozen vegetables. Our girls are particular fans of sweet corn, peas, sugar snap peas, carrots, broccoli, and something else. I can't remember what the something else is. It's usually a variety, or sometimes we just get like a farmer's mix and then they just get a little bit of defrosted frozen farmer's mix in the evening, depending on what fresh vegetables we've got in that day. But that is what they get at the end of the day. They get a variety of chopped veg that they can then just pick and choose whichever one they want to eat. And that is their diet. That is what they eat on a day-to-day basis. And that does not include their training. Anytime we do any form of training, they obviously do get their treats. They get 1 almond before bed. and they get this because this is their reward for going to bed, which is also one of the reasons that they are so adamant about going to bed on time, because that's when they get their almond, their favorite. And then they get a teaspoon of pine nuts each for their training. So we do actually measure out our treats. Sometimes we don't. For example, if we go free flying, we don't measure out our treats because they burn off a lot more energy when free flying. But when it comes to general training, we usually measure out a teaspoon of pine nuts each, and then they get to nibble on those pine nuts throughout the training session. And that is what my girls eat every day. That is what they have for breakfast, dinner, and lunch. So they technically get fed 3 times a day, but they get fed small portions and they mostly get vegetables. The pellets are more of a top up and something for them to snack on that isn't going to go off while we're out of the house. And then the fresh food is what they have while we're home and can take it away once they've finished with it. Because the last thing you want is to leave the vegetables out and then get a house full of fruit flies. Been there, done that, got the t-shirt more times than I would like to admit. I have come home on several occasions where my house has been swarmed to the brim of fruit flies. Jason or myself hasn't taken the fruit out like the night before and left it overnight by accident, and then we've just woke up to a face load of fruit flies. It's a nightmare. Don't do it. If you're going to give your parrot fruit and veg, which you should be giving either fresh chop or fresh fruit and veg every day. Yes, our chop is a little different to other people's. A lot of people just have pure vegetables and seeds and sprouts and everything else in their chop. We do a mixture of dry mix and vegetables in our chop because it's just easier. Because of our time constraints, because of our finances, it's physically easier for us to do that method in the morning, and then again that lasts us for 4 days then through the week. And it's quick, it's simple, it takes about 5 minutes to make. And I believe that was all the questions. That was all the questions that we had today. So thank you everyone to actually submitted questions. I hope I answered them at least decently, if nothing else, or to an acceptable level. If you do have any other questions, please feel free to drop them in the comments below and I will do my best to answer them. I always try and read every single comment, especially while we're still quite a small channel. I do try and read every single comment and I do try and answer as many as I physically can as well. As I said, I'm also going to give you guys a bit of a life update in this video. We finally have our own house. We are in the middle of renovating and decorating it at the moment. We've got some major repairs to do on the roof, which is delaying our move-in date. However, we are hoping to be moved in by the end of the month. So please bear with us while we deal with that, because that is taking up all our spare time, literally all our spare time. It is absolutely manic. And I've got so many doctor's appointments I need to go to and so many checkups I need to go to and scans I need to attend at the moment. It's just absolutely crazy. We've got so much going on right now. It is insane. But that's the biggest sort of life update information I need to give you. You might have also seen another major life update during this video. If you haven't spotted the clues and hints, go back, maybe have a rewatch and see if you can guess what the other one is. I'll give you a hint. It's the answer to whether or not we're getting a third bird. Can't remember the answer I gave to that question. Go back and have a look and then see if you can spot the hints dropped in the video. But thank you ever so much for watching, guys, and I will see you again soon.